Okay, so good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to BrAInstorm talk number 6. Today we will discuss about the future of work and how AI is shaping our work realities in general. But to start, I would like to share with you some tech aspects that will hopefully make our interactions online more pleasant. So first of all, I think it's important for you to know that we are recording this session and we are also live streaming on Facebook. Your mic will be muted, and we are grateful if you could keep your mics on mute until the Q&A session. You can always use the chat function if you have any burning questions that cannot wait until our Q&A session. And without further ado, just perhaps a few background elements for those that are connecting for the first time to our online talks. The BrAInstorm Talks is a joint initiative between two organizations, so Jamba Career for All and AI for Development Agency. Our main purpose is to raise awareness about AI and to ensure that all citizens are empowered in the era of artificial intelligence. This initiative encompasses in total 10 talks. So we are now by talk number 6. We still have 4 more to go. And as you can see, our next talk number 7, will be on AI in healthcare or AI in the healthcare industry, which will take place on the 22nd of April, 6 o'clock in the evening. So this evening, we are honored to be in the presence of Iulia ISTRATE, psychologist, global talent solutions architect and podcaster, and also David Timis, a global communications manager, generation curator, and TED speaker. It is really a pleasure to have you both with us. Iulia and David, welcome to our discussion. And we are very grateful to have you with us. Welcome. So for the audience, you'll hear more about their work and their views in a bit when we will have our discussion. So as you can see from the slide, we have prepared a very exciting program for you with the unique opportunity to win 30 minutes of individual coaching session with Iulia. There will be a very short quiz of about 5 questions that will be played at the end of this session. So please stay tuned until the end of the session and make sure you play the quiz so that you can win this amazing prize. Thank you again, Iulia, for your generosity. And before we get started with the discussion, we have actually prepared for you a very short poll of about 3 questions, as we would like to get to know our audience a little bit better. We'd like to get to know your expectations and your ideas on the future of work. So I think Angela has she has prepared for us this poll. So we invite all of you to take this the poll, so respond to our 3 questions. As you see, the first question would be, do you believe that your job will be displaced due to technology in the next 5 years? What about in the next 10 to 15 years? And the last question is, are you considering changing your career due to technology? So we expect the results of this poll to really give us a nice floor and basis for our discussion this evening, and also, of course, are very curious to hear your views and address perhaps some of the questions or issues you may have during the Q&A session. So let's wait perhaps a little bit more, Angela, right, to have more people connecting and taking the poll. There are really just 3 questions, so feel free to share all your views with us, and we will then discuss a little bit the results. Thank you already for your contributions coming in. Great. Yes, I think we can stop here, and let's go to the results. I'm really very curious to see what the audience is expecting. Great. So we see for the first question, 80% of you actually do not believe that your job is going to be replaced in the next 5 years. That's very, very interesting. So we have a quite optimistic, I would say, audience here. And yeah, quite a high percentage also for of those who believe that it won't be replaced either in 10 to 15 years. And some of you, looking at the third question, the results for the third question, some of you have already changed their career due to technology. Very interesting, and we will be very, very curious to hear more about this later in the discussion. Thank you very much. David, Iulia, do you want to add anything to these results, or we move on?
And really interested to chat after the discussion to see exactly who has managed to change their career and how they've done so. Maybe share some ideas with others, and maybe tell us a bit about how you think those who think that they are going to be influenced by AI or any other disruptive technology, why they believe so, and those who don't believe so, what kind of jobs do they have?
Exactly. Very, very interesting. Good. So let's start the discussion a little bit, right? So we have seen in recent years a lot of buzz around the future of work, around all this topic, and of course, the COVID-19 pandemic induced lockdowns, along with the related global recession that was caused in 2020, have created a highly uncertain outlook towards the job market and towards the future of work. And of course, it accelerated the arrival of the future of work, including skilling, upskilling revolutions. So these historical changes that we are really living raise a number of questions that ignite also debates as the one we are having this evening, basically, in an effort to understand how the future of work and the job market is shaped, and in particular, what young people and youth can do in making sure they succeed in the era of artificial intelligence. And now I would like to give the mic to, again, to our speakers, so to Iulia and David, to also introduce themselves officially and to welcome them again in our discussion. So Iulia, would you like to start?
Yeah, definitely I can start. So Iulia ISTRATE is my name. I'm a psychologist, an industrial organizational psychologist, so not the type that does therapy, but the type that does human resources and talent acquisition. We have types.
Important to precise.
Very, very important, yes. I've worked all my life with companies. Most of it has been talent acquisition, so helping people get the careers that they enjoy. And I've also done some organizational development, succession planning, so talent development. And 1 year and a bit ago, I started a podcast, which is called Skills for Mars, which is talking about the future of work and the careers of the future. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell, but you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you have questions for me, I'm here to answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us a taste of your work. David, a few words?
Sure. Thank you again for the invitation. My name is David, originally from Transylvania, Romania, and currently based in Brussels, Belgium. I'm a communicator at heart, as my current role, Global Communications Manager, says, but I dabble in quite a few things, be it public policy, curriculum design. I think the common denominator is the future of work, which is an area which I'm deeply passionate about, especially the challenge of how to help people going for the traditional education system find meaningful work. And this is what the organization I work for now, Generation, does, I would say, quite well, preparing, placing, and supporting young people and mid-career professionals in their career transitions and journeys. So I will stop here and looking forward to the discussion we'll have this evening.
Thank you. Thanks again to both of you for joining us. So let's start perhaps with a quite easy question. Easy on the brackets. So it has been almost 1 year now since we are in this pandemic. It has changed the way we interact with each other. It has changed the way we work. It has maybe changed for some of us also the way we look at life. How was your experience? To both of you, I'm addressing the question. How did you experience 2020? Who would like to start? Iulia? Perhaps?
I can see that I already have the mic unmuted and David is muted, so I'll go for it. So for me, it started with a lot of excitement. Then it was panic. then fear, then I ran away from a place which I thought was dangerous and going to a place which I thought was safe. I was in Singapore the moment this whole thing started. And when I came back home, everyone seemed so relaxed and peaceful that nothing is going to come to Europe. But in the end, I think exactly a year ago, we closed our borders and we started to feel the pandemic in Europe as well and in the US as well. I think the first period was definitely fear because we didn't know what was going to happen. We suppressed the fear, or at least I suppressed the fear with a lot of work. And towards the summer, then I somehow got relaxed and I understood how it affects younger people, healthier people, and so on. So I was able to enjoy life, enjoy some sports, get a bit out there, stay in the sun. I was really closed in my home for 2 months or so, yeah. And now pretty much it's a mix of excitement, a mix of discovery. You have this year has been a time for reflection. It has allowed me to rethink what I'm doing, to look at things differently, to learn more, to network more, to connect with people like I've never done before. And that's, yeah, I've met you in this year. I've met Eva this year. I met a lot of people and interesting people this year. So it has been an amazing year overall.
It's true. You're completely right. For me as well, I see 2020 as a year of really a lot of development and interesting and innovation, and we innovated ourselves somehow. It's innovation work. David, what about you? How was your year? Where were you when it started? And
yeah, my year started in a really interesting context because I was in a silence retreat. Probably the worst place to be for a communicator, a place where you have to shut up and close all your devices, be it your laptop and phone. And after a week of that, I woke up on the last day of the week, Sunday, waking back to a very different reality from the one I knew before joining the silence retreat and meditation course in the south of Belgium, where I was based at the time. Next morning, I packed my backpack because I only left with the backpack and left Belgium for Romania, where I heard, and I was eventually right. The situation was a bit better initially in terms of the way the health crisis was managed and handled overall. And I've actually spent a year in Romania, so I took advantage of the fact that everything from my master's, which I was pursuing at the time, to the future employment I had, was conducted online. So I took advantage of really staying a year with family and friends from my childhood. And in a sense, in order to kind of partially quote the World Economic Forum, but not all the way, to reflect, reimagine, and reshape at least my perspective on many things. So it was a good time for me in this perspective to spend time with family and to kind of rethink about my life and about life in general, about humanity in general, if I can put it like this, as much as it might sound a bit lofty, but I think we all had the chance to look a bit at the broader picture and how in what role we can play in this great scheme of things. So that was it for me, I think.
so true, so true. And let's stay with you, David, as you just had the mic open before. Your current research or your recent work actually is, as you were just saying, targeting or focusing more on the future of work and how AI is perhaps also shaping that that picture and that landscape. What are the trends that you have observed recently? What are the hypes ongoing in the research world or in the coulisses of the World Economic Forum?
It's actually fairly public, so it's not. I think at least to my eyes or in my sort of network, it's very common knowledge that what the COVID-19 crisis has done for many industries and sectors was to accelerate everything, especially the digital transformation, which was already happening for a few years, but it was not really equally divided. So tech companies, and I used to work for Google, were already working remotely. The employees, I mean, they were already, fairly digital. Obviously, it was their industry, their business, whilst many other entities, and now I also refer to the public sector, to universities in particular, were not really prepared to move everything online. So I think it was an accelerator, the pandemic. And when it comes to future work, it did the same thing. It fastened the adoption of automation tools, of robots, which is obviously, it has pros, but also a few cons, like most things. The pro side is that in a time of need in which we needed people to work in factories, and they couldn't because of physical distancing rules in many cases. We did have robots in warehouses and factories across the world who kind of supplemented that job. Same with software, automation software such as robotic process automation, which was already fairly popular and is becoming increasingly popular across organizations. The downside is that some of these changes, some of these, let's say, robotic or automation replacement of humans are going to be hard to reverse. And I do see many of the jobs that were sort of lost temporarily during the heat of the crisis, during the peak of the crisis. It will be hard to see both companies and employees want to do the same jobs now. And I refer now again to many of the more physical, dangerous jobs, either because of the COVID crisis, but also because of just their dangerous jobs. They're jobs working with heavy machinery, jobs in which people already were losing lives and getting injured before even the health crisis started. So, and I don't want to go into too much detail because it's a really complex question you asked, but I think this was the main sort of thing I noticed in my research, that the acceleration in general that COVID has brought, but in particular, when you look at the future of work, is the acceleration of implementing automation software and robotics, especially in physical jobs or industries that have a lot of physical jobs in their composition. So I'll stop here.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. You're right, that there are two sides to look at: the automation on the one side, and also then the future of work on the other side, and the revolution that is happening there too. So, Iulia, you mentioned in the introduction that you have created a podcast called Skills for Mars, in which you are promoting skilling and upskilling for a more resilient professional future. What drove that initiative actually? And so this is one question. The second question I would like to know more, as you were saying, that you are an industrial psychologist, basically, would you say that organizations, the organizations you are working with currently, are more receptive to this upskilling, reskilling revolution? Do you see them proactively taking the right measures to address this?
I'll start with the first one. So Skills for Mars. I really wanted to show, I'm an optimist, and I'm really passionate about exploring and finding new things. And I wanted to show that the future is not dark. AI is not going to steal our jobs and we will have nothing to do. We'll just sit lazy on the couch and waste our lives while receiving a new BI. That's not going to happen. There's going to be a merge of sorts. And most importantly, we can finally get back to what makes us human. I mean, who wants to do the job of picking an item, scanning it, and then bouncing it on another platform repeatedly, thousands of times a day? Who wants to lift, as David said, 20, 50, 70 kilos, walk down stairs and go back down and do this for the rest of their lives? I don't believe anyone wants to do that. Do we know exactly how this is going to be replaced with all the jobs? No, not necessarily, but we are on the path to finding that out. But I think just looking at the opportunities that the future holds for us, it's extremely, extremely energizing. Or for me, it gets me into a state that I go to sleep and I cannot sleep because of the excitement of the ideas that I have, not because something bad is going to happen. So I like this kind of state. So I wanted to transmit that for sure, and have guests who are talking about the positive sides and what's going to happen positive while we implement technology. So everyone can actually see what their opportunities are. So it's about Skills for Mars. And talking about organizations, it really depends. Some are really took the bull by the horns already. And like an Amazon, for example, they're already thinking that they're going to replace people with robots. So they're training their workforce already, reskilling them so they can get other jobs, better jobs when they get out of the warehouses. But some of them are nowhere near. They haven't even started thinking about it. And some are somewhere on the adoption curve. So I would say that, yeah, let's keep them somewhere in the adoption curve. But it's very, very funny because when you talk to them, I always give them the example from Fathom, right? They realize that they can easily turn accountants into cybersecurity specialists. I mean, it's just a knowledge or hard skill gap, not a soft skill gap, and they can easily do the transition. And whenever I talk to this with HR leaders and business leaders, they just look at me and turn around, and then 2 or 3 months later, they come back and they said, interesting thing about this future of work. Exactly how is this done? So when do we start? When should we do it? Who should we think about? So I think they're starting to open their eyes, but to be extremely fair, they have been in huge distress this past year. Figuring out which employees go to work, which do not, what to do if someone gets sick, how to keep them separated, how to work from home, how to make everyone feel included. I don't think this past year and a half for in some places has been easy for them. So the thinking about which job is going to be replaced by AI, I don't think at least this past year has been on anyone's mind. Remote work, though, has been. And that's driving us, as David said, some extremely significant change. I'm just thinking about people in remote locations that now, due to remote work, they can actually have access to jobs, whereas they have never had access to jobs. I'm thinking about people with disabilities that literally, I mean, they had to, we come from Romania, Transylvania, because we're really proud of it. But thinking about someone who's in a wheelchair, it's impossible to get out of a block of flats, get into a bus or any kind of public transportation, go to an office, get up to the 4th floor and work somewhere. It was infrastructurally impossible. But now, because these jobs can be done from home and companies are accepting this more and more, we are opening this to the whole world. And this is good.
Yeah, I agree. I think, as you were saying, right, so the current pandemic has definitely put certain jobs at risk, certain companies at risk, but there's also a wealth of creation of new possibilities and new jobs and facilitation of access to certain jobs for a particular category of people. So there are kind of a little bit of two sides of the coin here. But, you know, just before the pandemic, I had the impression actually in 2019 that governments around the world were creating so many reforms and many documents and many policies addressing the future of work and trying to make sure they are, you know, helping their citizens to catch up with all these transitions. And on the other side, the businesses in general are talking about enhancing productivity, using AI or not using AI. And, you know, I thought we were quite well prepared or we were somehow on track with this change. And yet I realize even more now, accelerated during the pandemic, that we are very far actually from being ready for the transition. And I have the impression that we are missing something in the whole picture. What are we missing in your opinion? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? Do you have any thoughts and ideas on that? Between policies, businesses trying to do their best to, you know, cope with the transition and also give their citizens or their employees the right skills.
I'm happy to jump in to complement what was already said by Iulia and also by yourself, ELENA, in the sense that I think all three of us, and hopefully many of the people watching, are fairly optimistic about the future, and I would say fans of technology and what it can bring us. However, I think the big challenge, as I previously mentioned, is that the pandemic has showed how many organizations were not prepared, and even more so, it showed how there's some issues which need immediate action. And one of them, which I didn't mention initially in my previous response, is mental health at work, which again, organizations or in many organizations, it was a taboo subject, which is now finally being discussed more openly between employers and their employees. The remote work, which Julia already mentioned and spoke about, which is also something which is happening, but again, not really officially, and in most cases informally. It was a discussion between an employee and his or her manager. Reskilling, the area I'm more focused in, which now has to happen, especially because of these jobs that are being displaced now, which has happened in the past, and they will be replaced, and the people who are in them will hopefully be reskilled. The big question is, how quickly can we reskill them, and can we do so at scale? These are the two sort of questions which keep me up at night most of the days, because especially for mid-career professionals, people in their 50s or maybe even 60s who lose their job because of automation or now COVID, it's a really tough target audience to find jobs for and to reskill at this age in which you're probably not thinking about changing careers, or most of us are not thinking about changing careers. So I think there's plenty of challenges, and most of them require, first of all, a private-public partnership. But you cannot do anything alone. Be it a large company like Amazon or Google, they've realized also early on that they cannot work in a silo. They need to work together, and also with governments. And governments also realize that in most cases, innovation doesn't come from within the government, unless you're a government like the one from Singapore or Switzerland, which are leading in especially the reskilling area I mentioned. But they realize they need each other. So if you have this public-private partnership, you can do the thing I think it's the most difficult, which is reskill people at scale and quickly, but only through partnership. Otherwise, it's virtually impossible to do so in silos.
Sure. I think I can echo for what David said. And just to add on that, besides the alignment, I think we also miss the thinking about these systems as complex systems, and we don't really understand how each influences one another. And we always we try so much, and it's one of the skills that we are very proud of, to simplify things. But a complex system cannot be really simplified. So we need to take it apart and look at it in a different way. We need to understand that we can't really control everything, but maybe more influence things. And I think we also need to talk about education, not only at university level and master's level, where people start to learn about AI and development and blockchain and all these new technologies, but even early on. And not only for the populations that live in big cities or university cities, but for everyone. We should know better what this means and what an algorithm is. Now it's simple. Now we can get it from early on and understand what it is. It's still in its infancy. We can still understand what it does. And I think another thing that this will bring very, very nicely is that we will then be able to judge, is this algorithm used in this situation? Is it good enough? Is it biased? What is it looking at? Because if you don't know what's behind, then the fear will stay. You will never know how to judge or how to assess if it's good or if it does the job that it should be doing. So education, I think, should be one of the things that as AI for development is doing, everyone should be doing.
Thank you. Well, definitely. And this, what you were just saying right now, takes me a little bit to the next question. If we were to think more about youth, basically, and how they perhaps perceive AI, and how in general will AI, fuel their their career paths. We also notice actually a lack of diversity in the AI industry and access to technology, also access to education in some places, access to internet in other places, which all of those things beg actually the question, how do we encourage youth from underrepresented populations to explore and pursue perhaps career in AI, or an understanding of AI in general? What kind of educational programming or informal learning have you seen out there that could be helpful for them to enhance and facilitate that dialogue among youth, in particular from underrepresented populations? David.
It's great to hear that we're moving towards this subject, which I guess we all care about, and for myself in particular, for sure, I love to speak about education and its role in this whole future of work, future of everything, because I think education is the key, regardless of what future we're speaking of. And access to education, quality education, I think is an important topic to really have a panel just on this, maybe in the future. But just to answer your question, I think now the pandemic has also exposed, and the word exposed is probably not too far-fetched, what lacks in the educational system of not just a country like Romania, but in the US and across the world, which is the nimbleness of a startup, the ability to adapt to change, which very few universities were initially, at least in the pandemic, were able to do. And I was actually a student when the pandemic started, and the university I was studying in, they had many challenges of moving everything online, and not just moving everybody and everything, the whole curriculum, but also to train some of the professors who are maybe less digitally savvy to now interact and engage with their students online. So this was a huge challenge. And I think there's two answers to your question. First of all, for AI and what you guys do with AIDA and other organizations, it's very important to equip people with digital literacy skills focused on specifically AI, as you guys do, which, there's also courses like Elements of AI, and Google and Microsoft have courses on AI as well, free courses online, which are great to educate people in the general topic of AI, and to have almost this sort of new ABCs, which is just A and I, artificial intelligence. So you need to know your A and I's in the future, the basics of it. However, what I see happening now in education for those of us who want to focus more on AI and other subjects in particular, is that nowadays people they're becoming more pragmatic. Obviously, the speed of change makes people to become more pragmatic and thinking more about their future after studying. And in many cases, after studying, people want to find a job. And unfortunately, as we have our educational system set up now in most places globally, you're not guaranteed a job. Even if you finish at Harvard or Stanford, you're literally not guaranteed anything. And you have to really still strive for finding a place of employment. And in many cases, in some cases, 2 to 4 years that you spend educating yourself are years in which you cannot really work full time. So this begs the question, is our education system prepared for this fast-paced world we live in which maybe if you start now studying an AI degree or AI-related degree in 4 years, it's irrelevant, which is already happening with many programming languages and computing science degrees. And if I would have to answer this question, my answer would be the future doesn't belong to 4-year educational programs, but to micro-credentials and sort of a 3 to 6 months programs in which even people who want to actually dive deeper in a subject like AI and not just want to have the sort of basic digital literacy, they could do so, and then afterwards potentially be, if not guaranteed, but at least, if not guaranteed a job, at least placed in an interview or have some sort of connection with an employer so they can put the skills they learn into practice. And I'm going to conclude with saying that we've seen a lot of entities, being private or public sector entities, organizations that are reskilling people. And I have to put it really bluntly, reskilling is not enough. I really realized it in my own previous work at Google and in other organizations that I admire that were reskilling people. There's a huge loss of potential if you just reskill somebody and then you don't help him or her find a job or a place that they can at least enter or find an apprenticeship and to put those skills to practice. They either forget those skills or for some reason never have the chance to put them to work, at least not immediately after they go through the training. So this micro-credential of education, I think, is the future, and then coupling the education system more clearly with employment opportunities after you finish those 3 to 6 months programs. I think this is what the future holds in regards to education and employment.
Definitely. Iulia.
For sure. And isn't it a pity that there are so many online courses, so many and so good, that are never recognized by any kind of employer, any kind of institute of education. No one is recognizing them, and there's so much effort put into them. I'm looking at some courses on blockchain and even on AI. They're so nicely and so well done, and some of them are just free. You can just access them online, and you can have the badge, right? They give you a badge for a credential, but no one really looks at it. And David, you were talking about mid-career changes, and that's pretty much where I dabble, and that's my specialty, people who want to really make big changes in their life. And it's so hard for them because most of them want to do self-directed learning online. They really understand what they need to learn and they can do it extremely fast. But then to even ask for an internship, honestly, even the policies are not in place for that in some countries, right? An internship means someone who has just is going to graduate or has just graduated from a university or from a master's. If you're not connected to any kind of educational system, you are not an intern. If you are 40, you are not an intern. So no one is even looking at them. Even though these people already know how to work in an organization, they can learn extremely quickly. They have just proved that they can relearn something and they can change. And it's very hard to do so. And there are some organizations who do this. There's one in Romania that I know of, and there's one in the UK. The one in Romania is called Hire 45 Plus. And the good thing that they are doing is that they are offering this kind of learning for 6 months, but then they also have managed to put in place internships or contracts with companies. So the people who learn digital marketing, for example, they can go into a company and practice digital marketing. There's another one that I know of in Amsterdam, which is called Growth Tribe, and they are teaching AI, but for very specific functions. So AI in HR, AI in marketing, AI in sales, and how different sorts of applications would help companies and would help these people do their jobs better or in a different way. And maybe there's one good lesson to take from an NGO, which is called Agastya. And they are really trying to get education to 15 million children in India which don't have access to education. Actually, they're living in remote places. And their aim for the next 5 years is to get education to 100 million people, which is incredible. And what they work on is curiosity. So they have this aha, ha, ha. So for just to connect people to what they learn new and how they can apply it in their day-to-day life. And I think just this principle of curiosity can be applied in anywhere, any kind of new technology, any kind of new things that we are doing.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. I was about to ask actually on how can we tap more into a higher order cognitive skills potential, basically, you know, related to creativity, critical thinking, etc. Because yes, we definitely have the technical skills on the one side, AI, digital, etc., that are driving and shaping definitely the future of work. I believe that we will all have to interact with this technology. We will all have to know how to manage, how to analyze it, how to understand. And even if we are not a programmer or coders, we will have to interact with it and know how that functions. That will be the Word of today, or Excel of today will become AI of tomorrow. But also, how can we, you know, really enhance all the socio-emotional skills as well, which became during the pandemic, I think, even more crucial and obvious that we have to enhance those as well for today's society, but also for the future. Yeah. And I think let's take perhaps one last question before we move into the Q&A session. Hopefully we'll have some interesting questions there to discuss, prepared by our audience. So Iulia, you were saying that you are an optimist. Any tips that you would like to share with our audience, with youth in general? What can they do to you know, be optimistic about the future and about the future of work for themselves? And then I will ask the same question to David too. What tips would you give them?
I'll still go back to education. And what I would say is start learning something new today, whatever that is, whatever makes you happy, whatever tickles your curiosity, start something new today. It will help you exercise the muscle of change and the muscle of learning. And that's one of the most important things that you can do for yourself. That's one of the most important crutches that you can rely on for a future-proof career. Learn, continuously learn. Don't stay on the couch and think that there's nothing to be done. There's always something to learn, always something that you can find to just sparkle a bit of curiosity. Opportunities will come your way. Keep talking with people, keep networking. And even if you are an introvert, honestly, what I have seen, and I'm not a full extrovert, I'm somewhere in the middle. I like getting out there, but not so much. And I'm kind of awkward when I start my podcast and so on. But you learn how to do it. And this year, everyone has been so willing to network, whether I reached out to them on LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere else. Everyone was really ready to jump on a call and share some thoughts with me. And it's good to bounce ideas. It's good to make connections. It's good to get to know others. I believe that building communities is one of the skills for the future, or a cluster of skills for the future, and getting yourself out there and just networking, just making those first steps is extremely, extremely important. It will help you and your career.
Thank you so much. So true. So get out of your comfort zone, be exposed to new things that will enhance curiosity, creativity, and perhaps also some decision making, that adaptability for sure. David, what tips do you have for our audience? Are you optimistic, by the way, or pessimistic about the future of work?
I'm very optimistic, as I previously mentioned. I think all three of us are
Yeah.
definitely aligned on this. So I'm optimistic, and I don't think any advice that I can give. And I mean, I agree with what Julia said, but this advice really depends on the person, indeed, because in some cases it would be really hard to convince somebody to do one thing or the other. What I think worked for me beyond the continuous learning, which was already mentioned, which I think is very important, is the idea of looking a bit within yourself to see what you actually want to do, what's meaningful for you. Because I think this concept of meaningfulness, especially at work, since we spend so much of our time, of our future of work at work, be it at the office or at home, it's really important to find something that you love to do, or create that job if it hasn't been created yet. So I think if you do that, I think the rest of the things will follow, because it's, and I speak now from experience, it was really hard for me, for instance, to learn data analytics, because I mean, I'm into future of work, so I know what all the exciting new jobs will be in the future. I read about them, I'm fascinated about them, and I would love to learn at least a couple of them, but I realized how it's not for me. It's something which I'm not that good at, and I'm not passionate about it as much as as hard as I tried to learn it, and I know the gist of it. I'm not going to be proficient. So I realized, luckily, early on, before I actually studied so many things which I'm not good at and I don't want to really develop, that it's more important to focus on your strengths, develop them, whilst having this sort of a broad and general perspective on a few other topics which they're important, but they're not just your cup of tea. So I think as long as we find what we really care about, everything else will eventually kind of fall into place.
Very interesting perspective, right? So have that a little bit of an inner journey, find that purpose and that energy that drives you in general, and then focus on that and strengthen that. Amazing. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you. Thanks to you both very, very much for being with us and sharing your ideas and your thoughts on the future of work. Let's take a few questions now from the audience. So we can either use the chat function, or if any of the participants would like to ask a question live, is more of an extrovert, to quote Iulia, and would like to unmute himself or herself and ask a question, the floor is open, or the mic is open. So let's see if anyone dares to ask a question, or if we will just use the chat function. So I see there is one question on the chat from Laura. Laura, would you like to ask your question or your questions?
Yeah, she kind of answered it when I was typing it but I'm just curious too, as you're working with organizations, how is that mindset shifting from this formal university education to these more informal, I don't want to say informal, but this more self-directed learning? Do you see it changing with the organizations that you're working with?
Laura, I don't see a systemic change in the way that a recruiter would know how to screen for these skills or even look for these skills in a CV or in the person they are talking with. I think it's more still person to person, and mostly not even based on recruiters' judgment, but mostly on the hiring manager, because they really understand if there's an IBM class that you took on AI or a Microsoft class, what that does. So they're ready to understand what you've learned technically. So it's not a systemic change yet. I hope it will be. It's driven by some NGOs mostly than anyone else, and I really hope this will happen. But we're not there yet.
And I guess also then, when you're submitting an application online, it's being screened. It's probably looking also for a university degree and these things. So I think that that's another issue, that getting through these application systems, screenings, what exactly you're looking for.
For sure, that's one big question, getting through this, because some companies already have the screening in place where they look for keywords. Like you've seen maybe now on LinkedIn that when you apply for a job, you have the top skills and how you match with the company. Some of them already use it, some not. But at least with LinkedIn, you have the possibility, and it's transparent enough that you understand what you need to change in your profile so it matches those requirements. But with other systems, you have no idea. So my advice here would be, and it's an advice I give very often, and I'm quite surprised that people still don't think about jobs in this way. Really read the job description. Really understand who are you going to apply to. Read their values page, their purpose and proposition towards their employees, because for sure they're going to look for those keywords. So the same way you use keywords in LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook, it's the same way that keywords will be used in CVs. We are not there yet. Some companies, maybe if they do volume recruitment, right, like in fast-moving goods, then they definitely look for those keywords. But if they are still more do specific recruitment, then it's still not there. There's still a human component, still someone who tries to look at your CV. And at this point, I think that's still a bit better than systems.
Great, wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Iulia. Thank you, Laura. I think we have one more question on chat from Angela. Angela, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
I'll try to be an extrovert then. I was rather wondering, because in the beginning you did mention that we do have a bit of technological gap when it comes to certain groups being more vulnerable, being less prone to have access to different kinds of technology and innovation. So now that we actually need more reskilling and more education so that those people can actually move forward in terms of development, what's the way of actually going about it, overcoming it, rather than exacerbating the extra quick development that we have been witnessing due to COVID-19? Because we know that technology has been moving much quicker in its implementation and adoption now. And the lag, isn't it getting even bigger for those groups?
Do you want to take this one, or?
It's a hot potato one.
Yes, let's start with David, perhaps.
I can do it if not an issue.
Yeah, go ahead, Iulia, if you offered, please do.
I think it's as I was just saying, I think it's a very complex thing to tackle, because you're not only dealing with technology and especially AI, it's built for scale, but you're also dealing with the human component, and humans change slower. I was just to give you an example, I just randomly, I like to ask taxi drivers, how do they feel about self-driving cars and their jobs being automated? And I had literally zero taxi drivers who really believed in this. Everyone looked at me like, where is this question coming from? That's a fairy tale. That's a story. They're not even thinking about this, right? And these cars are already being tested. I'm actually looking forward to jumping into one, because I'm so bad as a driver. And all of them are thinking, no human being will get into a car that's driven by an algorithm, by AI, and feel safe. So they will always need me in the car. So even though I think that there is education that they can take right now, there are steps that they can take right now to be reskilled, changing that mindset and really understanding how things are going to change due to all of these new technologies. I think we are not there yet as human beings. Some of us are, and mostly it's being pushed by companies, because instead of laying off their employees, they would rather like to reuse their skill, reskill them, and keep them inside the companies. And maybe the accountants are feeling this more and more, because they are being taken over by systems, the same with cashiers, the same with bank tellers. And definitely it's companies who are driving this for them more than individuals. So we need to somehow get to mix the two of them together and get the change and the speed in our brains as well, not only in the systems.
Question. Hi. You were mentioning that a lot of companies are investing on reskilling their workers, but obviously not everyone can be reskilled. Companies can't afford to keep everyone. So what do you think is going to happen to the people that are left over that can't fit, or that are not going to be picked for reskilling? how do you suppose that's going to fit into society if a lot of companies keep changing their processes to machines, exchanging their people for machines?
Interesting
Happy to
question.
tackle it. Happy to
Great.
tackle this question from Carolina, from Portugal. I know we're connected already. That's
Yes.
why I think it's a great question because I see the two scenarios. And I mean, I'm an optimist, but I do realize what the reality looks like, which is both a pro and a con side to everything. And the utopian scenario is a situation in which even if your company doesn't reskill you and fires you, you would be in a country in which you would have either a UBI, Universal Basic Income, or a program like the Singaporean learning credits, governmental program for which everybody receives money they can use, virtual money they can use to reskill themselves, so that you would have some sort of social safety net in the time in which you're either looking for another job or again taking courses to reskill yourself. This is the utopian one. I say it is, as you can imagine, fairly a distant future for many countries, so we're not there yet. The dystopian scenario was, in the words of Harari, of having a useless class, a class of people who are not easy to be reskilled, who both companies and potentially governments are not finding a lot of value in reskilling, which is definitely something to worry about. The middle ground to these two scenarios is that we will wake up now, that COVID is the wake-up call we all needed, so that companies will do as our friends from Fathom always preach, not automate but augment, so use technology to help people be free of mundane tasks and do actually more meaningful work. And in the meantime, if you have a person who literally cannot be, for some reason, reskilled, Amazon has this program for which, before literally firing people, they give them 6 months of training and support to help them find a new career. So there are already programs in place that are helping employees who are, as I said, potentially not easily reskilled to find some sort of meaning. But I don't know what the future will hold. If we're going to be more in the middle ground I described just now, or it's going to be more of a dystopia or a utopia, it remains for us to see. And the only thing I can encourage people to do is to prepare themselves and not really wait for anybody to do it for them, be it governments or private sector. Continuous learning is what Iulia already mentioned, which I'm a huge supporter of. We should empower and we should feel empowered to do our own learning and reskilling as much as we can do it, obviously, and to not count on anybody but ourselves in this journey, because at this stage, not many countries or companies are doing it, but hopefully more will do it in the future.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to the moment where we value a job like a community leader, someone who lives in my neighborhood, who in times of crisis just checks on the people who are either elderly or people who have parents at home or who have 3 or 4 kids at home. And we value that job, and we pay for that job. We compensate that job as well. We don't only give them a pat on the back, because I think that's really important. If you look at the tiny details in our society, I think we are missing so many things. There's so many things that we would like to see better. So why not leverage the skill set that will be out of a job and let them do those jobs?
Amazing. And, that makes me think of some recent research I read about, also the idea of having motherhood as a job, right? And being a paid job as well. So I also look forward to to that kind of setting in our system. Thank you so much. I'm afraid we don't have any time left for further questions. So I thank you all from the audience for your questions, and also our guest speakers for answering those with a very clear messages and concrete information. So we are moving towards the last part, and perhaps one of the exciting parts as well of our talk, the quiz. As you know, we will have a little quiz to play, and which will give the top 5 winners the opportunity to win 30 minutes of poetry session with Iulia. And I would like to ask Angela to see if she is ready to play with us the quiz. So there will be an interactive system you will see on the screen. So she will share the screen with all of us. You will just have to connect on a specific website, put in a code, and then the platform will do the rest, basically. So we invite you all to connect on menti.com, so www.menti.com, and then you will be asked to put in that code that you see on the screen. And I think you will have to name yourself. So you can, I encourage you to use your real forename. It will be easier for us to track then the top winners and make sure we reach out then to you to put you in touch with Iulia and schedule the sessions, the amazing sessions you'll be able to play. So the first question is already ongoing. So you'll have a few seconds left to answer this question. What do you think? Good. Okay. Hope all of you have the right answer. So answer A was the right answer. I think we can go to the next question. Question 2 out of 5. Yes, so the faster you answer, the more points you get. Oh, this is an easy one. Who made these questions? Great, let's see how many correct answers do we have. Okay. All right. Fabulous. Let's try
Great
one.
opportunities, right? 85% still not, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. As you both of you were saying, we will shape together, create the future together. Let's move to the next question. Question number 3. So 3 more questions to go. Yeah, next question. I think, Angela, if you go on the file back where you were before, where you have the legend, exactly, click on next. Yeah, great. So question number 3. Of what will be managed without a human by 2020? Who knows? Who has any idea? Customer interaction. That's what Gartner says. You can complain if you are not happy with the result. You can complain to Gartner.
Unfortunately, that happens more and more. I miss the customer interaction, honestly. The human one.
Same here. Same here. Okay, next question, the 4th one. This should be an easy one for our audience. Which tool is used in AI? Python, yes. Bravo, great. Fabulous. And we'll now have the last question, and then hopefully we'll be able also to see the winners. Okay. City top ranked in AI. There are some. Competition is definitely big between countries and also between
We all went.
cities. Yeah, yeah. Beijing was it. Great, fabulous. Now let's move to the last not question but slide, which is supposed to show us the results. So let's see if our system really works. In any case, we will definitely be able to, yes, wonderful, great. So we do have some results and we can also see the first 5 winners. Amazing, fabulous. So Ismail has won the first place. Then we have Gotthard,
Congrats.
Sebastian,
Laura, I
and
think.
yeah, definitely we'll have access to the results and also exactly great. So we will ask each of you, so the first 5 top winners basically, to reach out to Iulia. Would you like us to do it like that, or would you like us to coordinate perhaps? How do you prefer?
I can do it directly. I just put my email and my LinkedIn link in the chat. I'm still old school. I like to manage my own time. I like automation in any other type of systems, but my own time I manage myself, but I promise I reply very quickly.
It's wonderful. Well, we would definitely not be as efficient as a robot, automated robot, in managing all that. So happy to have the top winners reaching out directly to Iulia. So
and more than happy to talk with anyone, so don't hesitate.
Yes, so feel free to connect with her. You have her LinkedIn and also her email address just shared on chat. So make sure you write that down, note that down, and reach out to her, schedule with her a session. We thank you again, Iulia, for this amazing opportunity. And thank you to all of you for taking the quiz, basically participating, playing the game. And without further ado, it's already 7 o'clock my time. I would like to thank you both again, David and Iulia, for being here with us this evening. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your already busy schedule to talk to our audience about the future of work, about your experience. And also extremely happy to see you are both positive about it, both encouraging us to be creative, to get out of our comfort zone a little bit, keep learning, keep talking, keep networking, keep addressing new things that we may be afraid of at the first sight, but would definitely be very, very useful in the long run. Thank you again for being with us. And for the audience, we have a next talk coming up, which will be on the 22nd of April. As I have already mentioned in the introduction, feel free to connect with us on Facebook channel, Meetup, and also all other social media channels that we have. Last word, Iulia and David, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you? How
David,
can they
go ahead.
Connect with you?
I feel like I spoke too much.
I'm also going to share my LinkedIn profile because it's where I'm also fairly responsive, and then we can move the discussion to email or WhatsApp depending on what you guys also prefer. So yeah, happy to connect on LinkedIn.
Yeah, same here. You can find me on LinkedIn. I always have my LinkedIn page open. You can also find me on the email that I've just shared with everyone, and you can also find me through the podcast. So I'm pretty much out there.
Thank you. Thanks again to everyone for being with us this evening. We wish you a bright future. Make sure you connect with people, learn something new, and share those insights with the rest of us. Thank you. Take care. Have a lovely evening.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.